Okay, so we're going to take a look at the 21 mass shootings from last week and the 19 mass shootings that happened over Labor Day weekend alone that you didn't know happened unless you lived in one of these cities. But first, you'll be happy to know that the 19 mass shootings on Labor Day weekend is not a record. Nope, it likely would have been had we not had the Summer of Love back in 2020. Yes, 2020 had 23 mass shootings over Labor Day, and although I can't verify it back more than 8 to 10 years, I'd say with some confidence that was a record. But this year ranks second. 2021 had 17, 2019 had 16, and prior to that, 2018 had 9, and 2017 had only 4. So 2019, they were already on a rise, but 2020 likely set a record, and these are counted from Friday through Monday of Labor Day weekend. So it's the whole weekend. So let's start with the 3 from this past Labor Day, the 3 from Friday: Brooklyn, Minneapolis, and Fresno. And I'm going to try and keep these each kind of brief so this video doesn't end up taking about 2 hours. So this was Brooklyn's 7th mass shooting this year, and 4 people were injured at a motorcycle club or a biker club. There's not a whole lot of information on it. Sounds like someone just drove by and opened fire on the group of people. And Minneapolis had their 5th one. I actually did a separate video on this one if you want to get a more in-depth look at what happened on this one. But again, 4 people were injured, all with life-threatening injuries. There was a shooting at a liquor store. They started off, they were fighting inside the store. It spilled out in the parking lot. And one of the groups got in a car and left and opened fire on people while they were leaving. Fresno, California had their 4th mass shooting this year. And 2 people were killed and 3 people were injured. This one was basically a drug deal that's gone bad. Okay, we'll move on to Saturday. So Saturday had 6 mass shootings. 1 in Capitol Heights, Maryland, 1 in Palatka, Florida, 1 in Birmingham, Alabama, 1 in Dover, Delaware, and 1 in Yorkville, Illinois, and another in Chico, California. The Capitol Heights, Maryland had one person was killed and 3 people were injured. The boy that was killed was 15-year-old DeAndre Johnson, and it looks like another teenager was injured, and the other 2 were adults. In this one, the story reads, a 15-year-old boy was killed and 3 other people were injured when at least 2 gunmen opened fire on them Saturday evening inside a 7-Eleven store in Capitol Heights, Maryland. A $25,000 reward is being offered for information leading to the arrest of the killers. Then in Palatka, Florida, 2 were injured and 2 were killed. The 2 that were killed were 26-year-old Luther Ward Jr. and 32-year-old Dante Diaz. And this happened in the parking lot of Vic's Supper Club. And it says 4 people were shot and 1 person was beaten with a blunt object. All 5 victims were rushed to the local hospital before being airlifted to trauma centers. 2 of the gunshot victims have since died. No further information about the victims is available at this time. Then Birmingham, Alabama. Again, 2 people were killed and 2 people were injured. The 2 that were killed were 24-year-old Jalen Jamarcus Tolbert and 25-year-old Marquise Terrell Yarborough. And the other 2 victims were adult males. Apparently, at least 24 shots were fired during an argument. 3 of the victims were found in an alley, and the other one was walking around. In Yorkville, Illinois, 4 people were injured, all aged 18 to 22, 3 females and 1 male. And this one happened at a house party, block party, and that's a normal situation. These things happen at these kind of parties. And it just says, at this time it appears the suspect opened fire with a handgun following a dispute between attendees at the party. That's basically all we got for information on that one. The next one, Chico, California. And in Chico, 5 people were injured. Looks like they were aged between 16 and 21. Again, another house party, block party. Everyone was transported to the hospital by ambulance. Not much to say about that one. So let's move on to Sunday. So there are 5 mass shootings on Sunday, the 4th, in Charleston, South Carolina, Chicago, Fort Lauderdale, Norfolk, and St. Paul, Minnesota. Charleston, South Carolina, 5 people were injured. Looks like just all adult males. And the suspects in this one were apprehended. It looks like 20-year-old Tyvon Davis and an unnamed 16-year-old due to his age were both arrested for the shooting. In Chicago, Illinois, there were 2 were injured and 2 were killed. The 2 victims were 20-year-old David DeVoe Jr. and 18-year-old Jason Mundo. The other victims were aged 18 and 20, the 2 that were injured, and they were shot as they stood outside a residence. So it said that all 4 of them were standing on a porch in front of a residence when multiple people approached the porch and fired shots, walked up to them, pulled out a handgun, and fired shots. Normal for Chicago. In Fort Lauderdale, Florida, 4 people were injured, young teens, 12-year-old Willie Cheaton III, another teenager, and then 2 adults at a Little League football game that was not affiliated with the school. In Norfolk, Virginia, 2 were killed and 5 injured. The 2 victims that were killed were 25-year-old Zaber Miller and 19-year-old Angela McKnight. This one happened near Old Dominion University, and there were several students from Norfolk State University injured there. It was basically a house party, block party that someone opened fire. And in St. Paul, Minnesota, 3 were killed and 2 were injured. The 3 victims were 33-year-old Angelica M. Gonzalez, 42-year-old Corey Freeman, and 44-year-old Maisha Spaulding. And this was a domestic violence incident. Okay, and on the 5th, Labor Day, there were 5 mass shootings. St. Louis, Cleveland, Hartwell, Kansas City, Philadelphia all had them. So the St. Louis, Missouri, this was their 5th mass shooting of the year. They had 4 people were injured. Looks like they were all adults, aged 22 to 65, all males. And it was basically a drive-by. 2 men shooting from a car and hitting these guys. In Cleveland, Ohio, 1 was killed and 10 were injured. The man who died was 30-year-old Tyron Lewis, and the victims all seemed to be adults. This happened at a bar. 1 person was killed and at least 10 others injured in a shooting outside a bar early Monday morning. When officers arrived, several victims were taken to various hospitals. 1 person died from their injuries. No other information about the victims has been released at this time. That was the 5th one in Cleveland this year. And Hartwell, Georgia, 2 were killed and 2 were injured. The 2 that were killed were 25-year-old Joseph Johnson and 39-year-old Roberius Thornton. And this happened in a bar. The police said they responded to the Jack's Bar and Grill nightclub around 2:15 a.m. and located at least 3 shooting victims. One of those victims was pronounced dead at the scene. That was Roberius Thornton. The 2 other people were taken to the hospital with life-threatening injuries, and Joseph Johnson passed away then at the hospital. And a 4th victim went to the hospital on their own and was treated and released. In Kansas City, Missouri, they had their 3rd mass shooting of the year, and 2 people were killed and 2 were injured. 26-year-old Deshaun Dudley and 20-year-old Dondre Hart were the 2 victims that were killed. And this is another house party. When police arrived, they found 3 people shot. 2 victims died at the scene, and the third was taken to the hospital and is expected to survive. A 4th victim was driven to the hospital and is also expected to survive. The police say the shooting took place during a house party. There are no suspects at this time. Then good old Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. 2 people died and 4 were injured. And this was Philly's 19th mass shooting this year. And I'm telling you, they're really trying to keep up with Chicago. They are trying so hard in Philly to keep up with Chicago on this stuff. They just can't. They don't have the people there to do it. A 33-year-old female died. A 19-year-old male died. And then the rest were aged 17 to 55 with injuries. Over 50 shots were fired from 2 gunmen. Okay, and then September 6th was quiet. There were no mass shootings on September 6th, but there were 2 on September 7th, one in Memphis and another one in Washington, D.C. The Memphis one had 4 people were killed and 3 were injured. And the names of the victims have not been released as of right now at the time that I'm doing this, but it looks like everyone was an adult. And this was the 4th mass shooting for Memphis this year. And there's really, aside from the address, there's not a lot of information on that one at this time. And then Washington, D.C., 1 person was killed and 3 were injured. And Washington, D.C.'s 8th mass shooting of the year. And it looks like they were all adults, all adult males. 2 people exited a vehicle and shot towards a crowd near Henley Elementary School. Classy. And there's not much about this one at this time either. I'm doing this on the 8th and these happened on the 7th, and there's not a whole lot of information about either of these 2 from the 7th. So those were the 21 mass shootings this week. I hope this information was helpful to anybody that was curious about just about what kind of mass shootings these are. They're all kind of the same thing every week. Mostly like house parties and drive-bys. A lot of stuff that happens in bars, and a lot of stuff that happens just because a couple people get in a fight and one person gets mad and he just starts shooting up the place. I mean, these things, a lot of them are just so senseless. There's no need to them, but they happen all the time, every day. If you follow my channel, you know there's, on any given week, there's 15 to 20 of them. That's normal. This week had 21. The 19 over Labor Day weekend, that's pretty high for a weekend, but, you know, it's a holiday. It was a 4-day weekend and 3-day weekend, however you want to count it. I counted it as 4 days because I included Friday in on it. But this is just kind of the stuff that's going on right now. Everybody using a gun to solve their problems. So if you like this kind of stuff, and you want to hear about these mass shootings every week, leave a message in the comments and just let me know if this is something you're interested in. A lot of these, there's not a whole lot to them other than it's just kind of interesting to hear just how many happen and where they happen at, and how many of these cities just have them all the time. Like Chicago has them all the time. Philly has them all the time. You know, Chicago, the one they had this week, that was their 33rd on the year. Although they had over 60 last year, so they're actually doing kind of good this year. But that's all I got for you today as far as the mass shootings go. So stay safe, America. Keep your head on a swivel, and remember, a bullet can travel over a mile unimpeded. So keep dodging those strays till these shooters get better aim. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.